So we discussed previously a lot of the various types of frames and where those frames come from, the positive and negative implications of stereotyping and how these generalizations are impacted by various factors. Now we want to move more into the position and interests and needs and how those are also influencing how we look at the negotiation. So the biggest thing is like, why do these particular frames matter? So certain conflict resolution processes may be better suited to reach a particular outcome, while competing strategies may lead to unwanted or desirable outcomes. Because it would take too much time and energy to explore in detail every and each option, conflict management frames allow people to look at their preferred outcome and eliminate certain processes or procedures from the consideration. For example, in an environmental dispute over a proposed logging plan that would clear cut 5,000 acres of old growth forest, one environmental group might try negotiation in an attempt to reduce the number of acres to be cut. Another might see logging as non negotiable, so they would go to court to try and stop any logging from happening. A third, more radical group may not trust the court, preferring to take more direct action to stopping any logging. They might, for instance, sit in or chain themselves to trees to block the loggers while gaining publicity and, in theory, public support for their views. Through their respective frames, each group would likely eliminate choices that would involve giving up or giving in their view, to the opposite party. Using this concept of framing allows an analyst to explain why groups with similar interests and values, such as the pro-environmental group, could come to radically different conclusions about the best course of action when confronting a particular dispute. This perspective on frames is also helpful for evaluating whether and to what extent an individual disputant may become involved in a conflict and the course of action they are likely to pursue to achieve their desired outcomes. But just like anything, framing also has limits. The most important insight gained from the process conflict management framing perspective is that these frames tend to limit an individual's ability to examine alternative options fairly and to determine which are most likely to be effective in particular situations. When one frames the conflict through one particular set of conflict resolution lenses, one tends to ignore, overlook, or criticize competing solutions without giving them the careful evaluations that they actually might merit. So let's focus more on interests and needs. While some conflict theorists blend the concepts of interests and needs together, human needs theorists such as John Burton and Herbert Kellman distinguish between the two. They maintain that while interests are tangible things such as land, money, or jobs that can be traded and compromised, needs are intangible things such as identity, security, and recognition, and are not for trading. Conflicts between ethnic groups, for example, are almost always need based conflicts in which one group feels that its identity, security, or the recognition of the value of its culture is being denied. One common framing problem is the assumption that a conflict is caused by a conflict of interests, when it is really a conflict of fundamental needs, or a conflict of interests and needs taken together. In many cases, this occurs because issues surrounding needs are hidden underneath the more visible conflict over interests, where human needs are at stake. Reconciling interests will not make the conflict go away. This is particularly apparent, perhaps, in the Israeli Palestinian conflict. The Palestinians feel that they are being denied their legitimate national identity, while the Israelis feel a need to prevent the formation of a Palestinian state because they see such a state as a threat to Israeli security. However, much of the effort to resolve that conflict has been based on compromises over tangible things such as land. Such efforts do little to address parties' underlying needs for identity, security, and recognition. The goal of many dispute resolution approaches, such as mediation, negotiation, or even arbitration, however, those who frame a conflict in terms of human needs recognize that there are certain issues that are non negotiable. Unlike interests, needs cannot be bargained for, traded, or suppressed. When social conflicts are caused by the denial of a party's essential needs theorist argues that the victim will fight indefinitely for their achievement and will not give up until that goal is attained. If that is true, it easily explains why needs conflicts tend to be so intractable. However, unlike many interest-based conflicts, needs conflicts do not have to be win-lose. The reasons they seem to be is that they are often confused with interest conflicts. Yet, unlike land or water or money, which are often in short supply, needs do not run out. The provision of security to one group does not deny security to another. Rather, needs tend to be mutually reinforcing. If one group stops threatening the other, the first will, most likely stop threatening them. In order to resolve conflicts rooted in human needs, parties need to turn away from traditional negotiation models. Indeed, human need theorists point out that if agreements focus solely on material interests and ignore the underlying needs of adversaries, they may not be stable in the long run. If fundamental needs remain unmet, violent conflict is likely to resurface even if it is no longer manifested. For parties who approach their conflict in terms of human needs, problem-solving workshops often prove extremely useful. In these workshops, scholars help disputants to jointly analyze the fundamental sources of conflict, focusing on unmet human needs such as identity and security. Workshops help to create a settling in which adversaries can interact in more productive ways. Rather than reaching a settlement based on interest, the two central objectives of problem-solving workshops are the analysis of conflict and its ultimate resolution. From these workshops, people emerge new ideas to help participants restructure their societies and ensure that all parties' fundamental needs are met.